Hello, team. Welcome to the Azure Takeoff show again. It's you and me again. Last time I believe we talked about Power Apps and all that stuff. So what I wanted to ask you was, what are the applications that could go with Logic App that complements Logic App, basically?
So it's a great question, and it's nice to be on the show. So Logic Apps is usually used with in integration service environments. So whenever
Mhm.
you're trying to build integration services, Logic Apps is mainly used with API management, and that's
Okay.
something really exciting.
Okay. Now you mentioned something about API management. So what is API?
So API in simple, it's application programming interface, right? And this helps allows different types of applications to interact with each other without any user's intervention, right? So in today's world, APIs are everywhere, and
Okay.
most of the people are using it to do from the smallest to the biggest stuff they are doing in the API world.
Excellent. But like, I mean, can you explain to me some scenarios where you could use API management?
Yes, for sure. So I have a bit of slides which I can actually add that up. So let me
Cool.
go ahead and bring that up. So API management scenarios can be in multiple different ways. So you can have cloud migration. So when you're doing cloud migrations, you can replace your on-prem solutions, or you have your existing APIs on premises. You can
Mhm.
actually expose them through an API management, right?
Okay.
In case if you are building application on the cloud directly, so all the cloud native applications and modernized applications can use the API management or API gateway, to be very specific, in platform as a service, containers, serverless based microservices environments as well. If you're using IoT solutions where they need to actually push the data, so you can have a management pane which can help you to actually go ahead and push this APIs to the IoT solutions. You can
Okay.
use it in big data platforms where you can have reportings and stuff like insights about your APIs and stuff like that on big data platforms. And the last one is you can use it in digital transformations as well. So if you want to build governance and enterprise wide APIs to be accessible by different organizations into your enterprises, you can actually
Mhm.
go ahead and use that as well.
So, Hatim, what is Azure API management then?
That's great. So Azure API Management is the service which we'll be using in our today's, or we'll be talking about in our today's video, which is the API Management is the service which helps you to manage all your internal, external APIs, and you can actually expose that to the end users, to your applications, to your devices, and stuff like that, right? Now,
Mhm.
the API Management consists of mainly three main components. One is the management pane, which is present on the Azure portal.
Okay.
So, the people who are managing your APIs or connecting your APIs, authentication, and a lot of other stuff which is available, yeah, they actually handle that through the management pane. The second
Okay.
one is the developer portal, which you as an admin can go ahead and expose that to your end users or your app developers in that case. So the
Okay.
app developers can go ahead and look at the definitions of your APIs, how to use it, onboard your APIs, as well as get access to your APIs to that level. So you can still open it, but you give access to the people who you approve it or you want them to access it, right?
Okay.
And the third one is the API gateway. So the API gateway is the common one, which is the endpoint pane, where all your applications, your devices, and any services which you're using can access your APIs, which are either from your Azure portal, from your microservices, or from your on-premise backend services as well, can be utilized in your API management, so that they can expose the services to the users who have access to this.
Okay. Great. So, if I make a good analogy out of this sort of thing, assuming that I am a government body, so I wanted to share information of like how buses are running or transportation is running. So I'll be the people saying API manager, API admins on the right hand side, and I would use the API Azure portal to create an API management gateway to say, okay, you could access information of like these buses, what time they're coming or whatever, or trains, what time they're coming. And I could actually create a development portal for developers to create their watch app or phone app to consume this information through the API gateway, right? Is that correct?
Correct. But the only difference here is the API gateway which you will have will be common for all the end users, right? So in that case, if you have multiple types of applications which you are trying to expose it to your audiences, you will have subscriptions which you will make it inside your API gateway. So depending on what type of API you want to expose, that subscription will be created for you, and it will help you in multiple different ways, right? So one is only the users who have access to your subscription, and that subscription is not your Azure subscription, to be to see the difference, because it's the same name. It's a subscription for your APIs and the products which you are actually exposing to the end user. Second thing, it also helps you to throttle it. So you don't want people to crash your systems and stuff like that. So API gateway will help you to throttle. So if you say that I can only provide this subscription to have only 100 requests per second, right? So you don't go above 100 requests per second, and that you can actually manage that through API management, and you can give it by subscription as well on this. And that's how you can have multiple APIs, multiple different subscriptions, and that is exposed to your end users.
So assuming again I'm an app developer, I would go to the development portal, get an application key of some sort, saying I could consume this API to find out when buses are coming. I cannot call it like 1,000 times. I have a throttle of it. How many times you call? That is actually managed by the API admins to say that for these kinds of subscription people or these groups of people, I want to allow them only to call it like maybe every seconds. They could only call it like 5 times or something like that.
Correct. And there's a part of monetization as well in this. Maybe we'll talk about the details of monetization later, but if you want to expose your services and also earn some money on that, you have a monetization part as well in the API management. So you can build plans of you want to access it 100 per second, 200 per second, and you can actually expose it depending on how users are trying to utilize your services.
So are you in some way saying that as a developer I could actually pay you and say that I actually need more consumption because like five pings are not enough. I have a lot of customers who need to actually
Correct. And just a good example, right now a lot of people are using ChatGPT and OpenAI APIs, right? So it's the same thing. You either put some credits and you get more bandwidth to call more number of calls to their APIs. Cool. And one thing to remember as a benefit of API management is it's not only the features which I discussed right now. So one of the great features with the versioning system is you can have multiple revisions as well as the versions. You can have it on your API management. So one of the things is whenever you are updating, or the consumers can actually choose when they want to adapt it. So you can have the version 2 of the API is out, but you have a new version 3 also which is coming up, and you added some more features. But to avoid any breaking changes, and to make sure that because you are exposing the services to end users, right, who are using, as you said, I want to include that in my own application, I need to make sure that if the provider tries to publish something new, there's no code breaking changes at my side. So whenever I want, as a consumer, I can choose to adopt it, and I can call that depending on the version of API I'm calling. So I can keep all the versionings, all the revisions, depending on what is available. So a sample API call without revisions would be you just call the service instance, the API which you are trying to call, and the operation, right? So you won't include the revision version. And from the backend API, what you will do is you will say which one is the current revision you are working with, right? So every end user would be able to, by default, get this revision, which is the revision 3, and they will be able to go ahead and access this without adding that to the URL. But what if you want to add the versions and you want to make sure that you are accessing the specific version and the specific revision? In that case, you can go ahead and mention that in your API by that you have this instance, your API, it's of version 2 with an operation as sessions, and then I can add the revision as well to say that I'm using this session for this revision. In that case, so I can be very specific, or I can be just depend on what the provider is actually giving me in that case.
Okay, so in some ways it's more for breaking changes. So if I developed an application and I wanted to call version 1 of the API, I know it works. Before I actually release my updated version, I could test it out with version 2 and see if everything works or not. And then if there's new features, I could adapt to new application, new features.
Now, what I will do is, before we go into this, I want to see how we can create a new API management, right? So you can
Okay.
just go to the Azure portal. You can go ahead and say API management here, and you can create a new API management service. So this is it. I can just go ahead and create a new API management. And the reason why I did this, I just wanted to show you a few things which actually comes up while you're creating a new API management service. Is first you will select your resource group, your region where you want to host it, your resource name. Now the important part is you'll put your organization name and your administrator email, so that any notifications, anything which you want to actually put, that you can have that available over here. One of the important things which we didn't discuss that as of now is your pricing tier actually depends on a number of steps. We will actually discuss that at the end of our session. But I wanted to add two more things over here. Is when you are in the premium tier, you will be able to deploy self-hosted gateways as well. Okay. And for that reason, there is something where you can actually add your virtual network to your API management service. And I remember in one of the projects when I was working with API management, we exposed on-prem services through a virtual network, which was connected to my backend services, and that backend services was exposed through API management, taking care of all the security, everything from the gateway itself. So it depends of how many self-hosted gateways you have and how many capacity units you have configured into your API management. Okay. And the next thing is the pricing tier. So you can have multiple pricing tiers available. You can go for a consumption one, you can go for a basic one, standard, and the premium one. Okay. If you're doing if you're working with a production grade workload and you have a lot of end users who are accessing it, I would recommend going with the premium one. But if you are using it internally in your own organization, then standard is still better in some cases.
Okay.
Because I've selected developer tier in the beginning, I can't put the scaled units. That's one of the reasons. But if we change it to to a premium tier, you can actually go ahead and see that I'll be able to configure as many, like 10 units, as many as 10 units I can, and I can put that up. So all the settings, once you configure this, and you can create a new API management service. For now, what I've done is I've already created one to show you how it looks like. If you remember our presentation, we said that there is a developer portal which is available, right? So when you click on this developer portal, it will help you to actually customize each and everything what you see, and this is kind of an end user website. So it's creating a website for you with whatever controls you have. You want to customize it, put your logo in and everything. You go ahead and do that and expose all the APIs. So, for example, I want to add some other widget over here. I want to create a new text and whatever you want, it's kind of a drag and drop tool. You can go ahead and create the whole page, and all the APIs which you are actually publishing it to the developer portal. So developers can go ahead and access that, view the products, view the APIs and stuff like that, right?
Okay.
The next part which I wanted to show you here is how you add the APIs, right? So the main part of that is the APIs, where you can go ahead and either write a manual. If you have an API, you can manually define that API, or using a WebSocket or a GraphQL. Or if you have the standard definitions available from the Open API, WSDL and other stuff like that, you can go ahead and create the whole definition from your existing files. So in some of the applications, Taswar, if you remember, we have the Swagger file, right? So Swagger is nothing but that Open API standard file. You can take that JSON and you can create the whole APIs over here directly.
Okay.
And the part which I was connecting to you is, if you want the best service which you can complement with, is the Logic App. So you can use Logic Apps in integration workflows, which combines the API management together. You can connect with your app services, your function apps, and the container apps as well. Okay. For the demo purposes, I will show you. I have one API already created for us, and this API has like different types of HTTP request. One is post, put, delete, get as well. And each one of them, as you can see, you can either test it from here. You can see the number of revisions I have, as well as if there is any settings which I wanted to do, like what is the service URL, how people would see that, which products they are available with, and what kind of authentication I want to provide for the user as a security. Okay.
Okay.
And each API, when you call that, It also has something where you need to enter your subscription key in that, and that subscription key, when you add it, and it depends on the subscription keys you create for different products. So you have a starter product, you have an unlimited product. So whatever products you create, that products can be added a subscription key, and depending on the subscription the user has, they can go ahead and call their APIs through the API management.
Okay.
And one last thing which I wanted to show is the backend. So whatever services or APIs you want to expose to your internal audiences or your external audiences, you can go ahead and do that by just adding it from here as well.
Okay.
Cool.
So in some ways you could add here is the Logic app, basically.
So you can connect. So there are two things which you can do. One is you can connect it through a Power Platform. Okay. Or what you can do is, for example, you want to run an integration service, right? So for example, every day, 8 o'clock in the morning, I want to call an API and fetch some data and then put it into, a different integrated or in different data source, right? So what it will do is it will connect my Logic apps to my API management, pull that data and then put it out there. So, it's kind of a trigger based system, and it then connects to your API management directly. Cool. And if you have any other questions or anything related to API management, feel free to post your comments in the video, and we will try to post some of the details which help you to jumpstart your API management processes.
Great, Hatim. So we'll put out a list of like Microsoft Learn and all that stuff where you can learn more about API management and stuff down in the show notes, basically. So thank you so much, Hatim. I learned quite a bit from the API management today. That I could wrap around any kind of services that I might want to expose through an API management that would actually manage all the security and all the other handlings, throttlings, and all that through an API. So it's almost like a front entrance to get into the other services that I need to without exposing my inside services of what they are.
Correct, 100%. I hope this was great, Taswar. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.